The Jimmy Kimmel Live studio pulsed with energy long before the cameras even rolled. The crowd was buzzing, that kind of low hum that comes before something unpredictable. Tonight's guest wasn't just another celebrity promoting a film. It was Robert De Niro, Hollywood royalty, unpredictable, sharp-tongued, and known for speaking his mind when others carefully measured their words. The producers had spent the whole day rehearsing questions, trimming risky topics, and reminding Jimmy to keep it light. But Jimmy Kimmel had his own ideas. He knew controversy made headlines, and headlines meant views. As the theme music hit, Jimmy stepped onto the stage, smiling wide as he waved to the roaring audience. He soaked in the cheers, gestured toward the band, and began his familiar monologue, his rhythm smooth, his tone playful. "Our next guest," he teased, "has been making movies longer than most TikTok stars have been alive. He's an icon, a legend, and, if we're lucky, he won't punch me tonight." The crowd laughed. "Please welcome, Robert De Niro." The lights shifted. The band played a jazzy rendition of the Raging Bull theme as De Niro walked out from behind the curtain. He moved with that unmistakable De Niro confidence, shoulders relaxed, chin slightly down, eyes scanning the room like he was sizing it up. He gave a curt nod to the audience, shook Jimmy's hand, and sat down. Jimmy leaned forward, beaming. "Robert, it's so good to have you here, man." De Niro gave a small, polite smile. "Good to be here. You know," Jimmy said, "I was rewatching Goodfellas last night, and I realized you could probably give a masterclass in looking terrifying without saying a single word." The audience laughed. De Niro smirked, tilting his head. "That's acting, Jimmy. You should try it sometime." The crowd erupted in laughter. Jimmy grinned, pretending to wince. Okay, he got me right out of the gate." For a few minutes, everything flowed easily. They talked about De Niro's latest film, a political thriller that had critics buzzing. De Niro described the intensity of the story, the realism of the dialogue, and his process of getting into character. But Jimmy couldn't help himself. His producers had whispered in his ear before the show, "Push the politics. Ask the tough stuff." They wanted a viral clip, and they knew De Niro's temper was the spark that could light it. "So, Bob," Jimmy began casually, flipping through his note cards, "this new movie deals with corruption, deception, power, it's pretty heavy stuff. Now, I've heard people say the story hits close to home for you. You've never been shy about your opinions on government and politicians. I'm curious, did you bring some of that fire to the role?" The laughter from the audience dimmed. It wasn't a funny question. It was bait, carefully disguised as conversation. De Niro shifted slightly, his eyes narrowing just enough for those who knew him to recognize it. "I don't bring politics into a role. I bring truth. If the truth happens to make people uncomfortable, that's their problem." Jimmy smiled, sensing the edge in the room but pressing forward. Right, but I mean, you've been, let's say, passionate about certain leaders in recent years. Ever worry that being so outspoken might alienate some of your fans?" De Niro looked at him evenly. "You ever worry about saying something stupid on live television?" The audience roared with laughter and clapping. Jimmy laughed too, but there was a stiffness in his face. "Touché. Fair point." But he didn't stop there. "Seriously though, people love you for your honesty, but some of the things you've said, some call them divisive. You don't think there's a line between an actor's platform and—" De Niro interrupted, calm but cutting. "The only line that matters is the one between truth and cowardice. I'm not crossing it." That sentence hit the room like a shot. The laughter vanished. The audience murmured, unsure if they should clap or wait. Jimmy blinked, the grin fading slightly. "Wow, strong words. I mean, I guess in your mind, you're one of the few brave ones left in Hollywood." De Niro leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice steady but loaded. "No, Jimmy, I just don't like being told what I'm allowed to care about. I've seen too many people in this town get quiet because it's safer. That's not bravery, that's survival. I'm too old for that." For the first time, Jimmy didn't know how to respond. The control booth buzzed with static commands in his earpiece. "Change topic. Go light." But Jimmy, proud and stubborn, pushed forward anyway. "Well," he said, feigning a chuckle, "it's refreshing to see someone in Hollywood not afraid of offending half the country." De Niro's lips pressed into a thin line. "Maybe if more people stopped worrying about who they're offending, we'd actually fix something around here." The audience started clapping, slowly at first, then louder. Jimmy's expression tightened. He could feel control slipping through his fingers. The applause wasn't for him. Trying to regain the tone, he held up his hands. All right, you're preaching now. I didn't realize I invited you here to host Real Time with Robert De Niro. De Niro smirked. Don't worry, Jimmy, I'm not trying to take your job. Just your attention span. The audience exploded in laughter again, this time at Jimmy's expense. He forced a smile, pretending to take it in stride, but the tension was thick now. The band members exchanged glances. Even Guillermo, Jimmy's sidekick, looked uncertain whether to laugh or stay quiet. When the cameras faded to black, the studio air felt electric, almost brittle. No one spoke at first, just the creak of chairs, the shuffling of cards, and the muted buzz of producers talking through headsets, their voices tight and urgent. Jimmy Kimmel sat in his seat, the grin long gone, jaw clenched. He rubbed a hand over his face and muttered, "What the hell was that?" De Niro was already gone. He hadn't waited for commercial return, hadn't stopped for handlers or photographers. He'd walked straight through the hallway with the same steady, purposeful stride he had entering the stage. A few crew members had tried to call out to him, "Mr. De Niro, sir, could we," but the look in his eyes silenced everyone. He wasn't angry, exactly. He was done. Backstage, the mood was chaos. The producers were talking over each other, cell phones ringing, messages pinging faster than anyone could answer. "We're trending already," one assistant shouted, eyes wide at the monitor. On the massive screen, hashtags were exploding across Twitter and YouTube. Hashtag De Niro on Kimmel, hashtag live meltdown, hashtag De Niro destroys Kimmel. Clips of the confrontation were already being sliced, subtitled, and shared millions of times over. Jimmy stormed into the hallway, pulling off his mic. "Where is he?" "He left," said one of the PAs. "Didn't even stop at his dressing room." "Good," Jimmy snapped. Then softer, "Jesus, he really did that." Sarah, the show's head producer, caught up to him, her headset swinging around her neck. "You pushed him, Jimmy. You went off script. We told you to stay on the movie." Jimmy turned to her, voice sharp. He came in with an attitude. "I'm not going to sit here and let him hijack my show with his political sermons." "Your show," Sarah shot back. "That sermon just gave us the biggest viral moment of the year." Jimmy blinked. "What?" She gestured toward a monitor mounted on the wall, showing a live feed of trending topics. Every major outlet had already picked it up: CNN, Variety, TMZ, even BBC Entertainment. Robert De Niro walks out on Jimmy Kimmel. "Don't cross the line," De Niro warns. De Niro versus late night TV, when icons bite back. Jimmy stared at the screen, watching himself frozen mid-expression, the thumbnail title reading, De Niro destroys Kimmel on air. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "He makes me look like the jerk." "That's how it works now," Sarah said, arms crossed. "Doesn't matter who's right, just who walks off first." Out in the streets, the city pulsed with new energy. Paparazzi stationed outside the studio were in a frenzy. They had missed the walkout itself, but now every camera in Hollywood was hunting for De Niro. And they didn't have to look long. Within the hour, footage emerged, him stepping into a black SUV, ignoring the shouts of reporters, one simple statement tossed over his shoulder: "Don't waste time asking dumb questions. Ask better ones." That quote spread like wildfire. By midnight, it was printed across headlines. By morning, it was a meme. By noon, it was a slogan on t-shirts. Meanwhile, Jimmy's PR team was in panic mode. They flooded social media with carefully worded tweets: "We love Robert and respect his passion. Great conversation tonight," but the damage was done. The internet had chosen sides, and most weren't on his. Fans from around the world filled comment sections with praise for De Niro's composure and condemnation for Jimmy's baiting tone. One viral clip showed De Niro saying, "I don't bring politics into a role. I bring truth," captioned, "A masterclass in integrity." Another, showing Jimmy's awkward smirk, was captioned, "When the comedian gets outperformed by a legend." The next morning, talk shows dissected it like a cultural autopsy. On Good Morning America, Robin Roberts called it a clash of eras, old Hollywood authenticity versus modern late-night sensationalism. On The View, even Whoopi defended De Niro, saying, "You can't invite someone like Bobby and expect him not to speak his mind. That's what makes him who he is." Joy Behar, unsurprisingly, sided with Jimmy: "Please, he's an actor, not a philosopher. Let's not make him the Dalai Lama of film." By afternoon, De Niro broke his silence. Not through a PR statement, not through his agent, but in his own way, direct and unfiltered. He appeared outside a Tribeca restaurant, holding his coffee, surrounded by a few reporters. Cameras flashed, microphones extended, and he simply said, "I wasn't there to argue." But if someone asks a real question, they get a real answer. "I don't play games for ratings." Then he walked inside. That clip hit harder than any press release ever could. It painted him as grounded, unwilling to play the Hollywood PR circus, and the internet ate it up. Think pieces followed. The Last Honest Man in Hollywood, De Niro versus The Machine, Why Authenticity Still Wins. Jimmy Kimmel, on the other hand, couldn't escape it. Everywhere he went, people quoted De Niro's lines back to him. "You ever worry about saying something stupid on live TV?" One fan shouted jokingly as Jimmy exited his car. Paparazzi laughed. Jimmy didn't. The next week's show opened differently. Jimmy walked out to polite applause, not the usual cheers. His tone was forcedly upbeat, but everyone could sense the tension. "Well," he began, chuckling nervously, "apparently I had a conversation last week. Some people called it heated, others called it the best moment of my career. I call it Tuesday."